Welcome to the latest edition of BizEngineTV. I'm Matt Sullivan.
And I'm Dave Choate.
Just a quick reminder, these videos are posted on YouTube, the website, www.BizEngineTV, just BizEngine.com. And make sure to check us out on social media on Twitter at the BizEngine and Facebook, which is www.facebook.com/BizEngine. Let's get into the news for this week.
Okay. Starting off today, we've got kind of an interesting story coming out of Congress. They're considering, alongside the Small Business Administration, sort of changing the designation for what a small business is. And one of the things that they're doing here is basically expanding it. There would be thousands more businesses who would be considered a small business if this happened. And I think it's interesting because some of these are things you would not traditionally think of as small business.
Yeah, so one of the things I did is I went and looked up what classifies a small business by the SBA, and it's all over the place. So some of the things that I'm looking at are the maximum number of employees for a manufacturing business is 500 to 1,500, and that depends upon the type of product that's manufactured. Wholesaling, it's 500 employees, again depending upon the type of product. For services and retailing, it's based upon revenue, so it's up to 21 million for retailing, which, I mean, that's not a small business in my mind. It's we were joking is that kind of like when it comes to classifying a small business, it's that famous quote about defining pornography. I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it. If I go to a manufacturing plant and I see 1,500 employees walking out of there at the end of a shift, I don't think that's a small business.
No, and also if they're all walking out at once, you worry that the building is on fire.
Yeah. So it's, it kind of goes back to what's the drive? Like, why do you think the SBA is suddenly doing this push of redefining small business?
I think it's really kind of an easy answer in some ways because the SBA is now a bigger part of the government. It's sort of being bolstered, it's being wrapped in with other organizations, Congress, they're considering eliminating. So it's in their interest to have more small businesses to talk to. Small businesses are a huge focus, and I do think there are businesses who are kind of between the big stable businesses that maybe don't need any help and the small businesses who are getting a lot of help who could use that extra boost. So I do think it makes some sense to expand it, but I also think you get to a point where you have over 1,000 employees, and that's an awful lot for a small business.
No, absolutely. It's yeah, and the really interesting thing is that they were redefining small business based upon certain industries. I think it was like professional, scientific, and engineering industries were the main ones that you could have these huge corporations of thousands of employees now being classified as a small business.
Yeah, and I think that might have something to do with the industry. I think it's probably harder to find smaller, say, manufacturing or bioscience type of companies. But again, you're starting to stretch credulity when you're 2,000 employees, and yeah, absolutely, small business.
Is that your word of the day?
It was.
Credulity?
I hope I pronounced it right.
I hope so too. All right, the next thing that jumped out at us is this debate about whether or not small businesses really are job creators. I think in a couple of the sound bites of Romney and Gingrich and whatever during the election season was saying that small businesses create 2 out of every 3 jobs in the U.S. But some economists are saying that that's not entirely true. That's gross job production, not net. It's that small businesses actually lay off more people than they hire in a given year. And so it's, are small businesses really going to be the fuel that drives the economy in the next year?
And I think it's a question worth asking because I think that sometimes, at the risk of sounding blasphemous, there's another vocab word, that sometimes, you have a situation where small businesses are overhyped as a job creation source. I mean, intuitively we know this because they are smaller businesses. But at the same time, I think to also say, well, they're not job creators. is also false.
Yeah.
They are job creators locally, and when you look at them as an overall, group, I'd say, you're looking at a lot of hiring
Yeah.
in a given year, and they're important to those communities who otherwise would not have those jobs.
Yeah, it's, I mean, going back to that, the SBA story we talked about, I think they said that there's over 350,000 small businesses in the US, and 70% of those are under 10 employees, and 95% of those are under 50 employees.
Right.
So, for argument's sake, every small business adds one new employee this year, that's 350,000 new jobs. But then, last year we heard stories about GM or Target or Best Buy doing these layoffs, and I might be completely wrong on the companies I threw out there, but we hear layoffs about 1,500 employees, 10,000 employees, 12,000 employees, and it's obviously, if they hired back a fraction of, if every one of these big companies hired back a fraction of their layoffs, that produces more jobs than the small business hiring, everybody hiring one new person a year.
It does, and I mean, again, we know this. We know that when a company embarks on a huge hiring drive like McDonald's did last year,
Yep.
they can afford to bring in thousands upon thousands of people. But I think you really have to take the big picture view with small business and say, over the country, over these 350,000 small companies, this is the hiring.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, in no way, shape, or form are we saying that small business hiring is not important. It's incredibly important, and it's really going to be a big push. But it's interesting to see that some economists are coming out and saying, it's not the holy grail of the economy and of business growth that some people are touting it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So grab your pitchforks and torches, and we'll tell you where those economists are.
Yeah. You want to talk about the next one?
I would like that. Yes, the best and worst states for small business. That's our next topic here. And it's kind of an interesting study. We got this off the street, which is a great website, but the measurement that they're using to arrive at this is interesting. And I was a little bit surprised to see that all 5 of the worst small business states on this list were in our neck of the woods, up here near New Hampshire.
It's, and the 5 worst are Rhode Island, Vermont, New Jersey, New York, and DC. So essentially, the Northeast.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The 5 best: South Carolina, Wyoming, Texas, Nevada, and South Dakota. South Dakota being the best, but then I started thinking, and the link will be below the video, but take a look at some of the things they're talking about: death tax, AMT, corporate tax, personal tax, stuff like
Wireless
that.
tax.
Wireless tax, income tax, property taxes,
Right.
all very valid things, but when it comes to starting a business, God love South Dakota, what's there? Do you have the brain power? Do you have the workforce to support what you're trying to do? And, sure, New York has awful taxes across the board for a business, but that's the wealth center of the US, the wealth center of the world. When I see articles like this, best and worst states to live in, to work in, whatever, I always go, where's New Hampshire listed? New Hampshire wasn't the best 5 or the worst 5, so I immediately went to Twitter and asked, what are some great talking points about New Hampshire? Great low income tax, personal, great corporate taxes, great incentives, educated workforce. Go to New Hampshire.
Zero sales tax.
Yeah, zero sales tax.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. And I think really one of the things you have to consider when you're talking about 5 best, 5 worst, any list like this is you should not just spring and go for a state because any one list says it's the best. Because, you mentioned South Dakota. Is the brain power going to be there? It might be, but you need to research.
Yeah.
The odds of it being there are perhaps not as good as it would be in New York. So, you really have to take the whole picture in here. And I think that's one of the things, as interesting as this list is, it doesn't really give you the full picture.
Yeah. So anybody watching, if your state is one of the 5 worst or one of the 5 best, back it up. And if you're not in that list, why do you think your state should be included there?
And remember, you can tweet us at the BizEngine.
Yep. So I think that's all the 3 stories we wanted to touch on. I know that we're starting a new bit this week, Business Book of the Week.
We are indeed, and I happen to have the Business Book of the Week right here. It's Joel Lababa, also known as the Franchise King, And his book is Become a Franchise Owner. I had to double check that.
Yeah.
And it's a great book. I mean, if you've ever thought about becoming a franchisee, you really owe it to yourself to pick this up. There's a lot of great practical advice here. You know, he's advising you to lean heavily on franchisees that have already been there, which is sound advice, and nobody in this business knows more than Joel. And, you know, while we're on the topic of Joel Labava, actually, we have, not us personally, but some of the sites we work with, Direct Capital and also FranchWire, are going to be holding a webinar with Joel Labava next Tuesday at 1 p.m.
That's Tuesday, February 21st, just to let everybody know.
Yes, I forget we're doing this in a time capsule.
Yes.
So, basically, if you want to get some great advice on, how to consult with franchisees, what questions to ask, how to get your finances in order, you've really got to check this out. So, we'll include the link right down below us here. So, hope to see you there.
Yep, and to plug our own story, it's Dave put a great post up on the BizEngine this week about 3 tips for selling equipment for your business. So take a look at that. Let us know if there's anything else that you want to see in terms of small business news or best practices. And I'm Matt Sullivan.
And I'm Dave Choate. Good night and good luck.